welcome to Flory Models Tuesday Q&A. I'm here for the next hour to answer as many of your questions I can possibly get through. And to be honest, you've all gone crazy on the forum and I've got literally pages and pages and pages. I've got a couple hundred questions to get through. Don't think we're going to do them all today, but obviously any that I don't answer will roll over. Anyway, my morning. Bit of a disaster yesterday. You might have seen on last night's vlog. It's quite a short one because I was really pressured on time and everything else. And you might have seen the Spitfire and all the rest of it. It was going great because I'll be honest with you, when I did the vlog, I left the filler drying. Then the idea was, can I have a bit of dinner, come in after dinner, then do part two, which was sanding all the fillers off and talking about the various different things and ways of doing it and everything else, which went great, I might add, and all the rest of it. And then I thought last night, well, I've got a couple of hours, I'll settle down and I'll edit it. So lo and behold, I sit down, edit the first half, which was great, which is what you saw up to in the vlog and all the rest of it. I come to do the bit which I just recorded, and this camera, which to be honest is the primary one where all the audio feeds come back to and everything else, didn't switch on, which I think was me. Which you'd think, I have a big red light on the front, which is always a big clue. No, it didn't. The other cameras all rolled it, but this one, because it does the audio, and you might notice a slight difference with the audio, we should be a lot better. Smoother sound, quality of sound and everything else. And also it saves me a massive job because I don't have to do post audio, because this new microphone systems we're using now works so much better. But anyway, it didn't come out, so this ended up in the bin. And Buster came out of retirement and I've reshot it all this morning. And in some ways I'm a bit more happy with how I did it because Buster's bigger, I could show you on a bigger scale and do a couple of different techniques with him as well. So it's going to be about 45 minutes. It will be up with you tomorrow. To be honest, as I'm recording this with the new system, it's rendering over there and doing its bit, which is great. So as I said, around about 45 minutes on this one, talks you through the basics of the fillers. Okay, so we're talking putties, we're talking thinned putties, super glues, things like that. When to use them, when not to use them, the pros, the cons, and everything else like that. So as I said, it'd be quite an interesting one to watch, and they're all going to sort of link together. So what I basically do at the end of this one, I say, now go off and watch the sanding one, because it will talk about sanding all what we've just done, various things like that, okay? And then obviously after that one, I'll then going to be doing rescribing. So the sanding one, it'll be, right, okay, and now we're going to do rescribing and re-riveting work, and then it'll be back onto primer. So we're going to work through all the stages of modelling. So that was put me back a day, if you like. So what I'm going to do is tomorrow I'm going to do two, okay? So then what I'm going to do is, obviously I'm going to do the thing about rescribing and re-riveting, and then the thing about priming there. Thursday then, hopefully, because I'm away on Friday, so it might be a bit of a busy day with orders and things like that to do, but then I hope to do something on various other stages. And then when we get into doing things like the airliners, I'm going to cover decaling, because there's quite complex decals to go on those things and various things like that. Also tomorrow you'll get the MIG up as well, so you know there'll be another part on that one where we didn't cover decaling because there wasn't a lot of points. There's only a couple of stars and some little markings on. There wasn't many on that one, and it was a pretty straightforward job. But hopefully these new tutorials will just be a way of speeding up the build, because I don't have to talk about how I've done all the re-riveting and rescribing. I'll show you obviously stuff that is important to the particular model I'm working on. So if it's something like, I don't know, rescribing, re-riveting how an engine joins to a wing or something, then obviously I'd show you. But if it's just, I've rescribed this area, you can go off and watch the video because it'll be far more detailed than what I'd show you in the individual build. So, needless to say, that was pretty exciting and busy. Anyway, on with your questions. So I'm going to basically pile on from the ones that happened after the show last week, and we'll work our way through. So I've got my laptop down here now. It's a bit easier than using it on the old iPad. So anyway, Paul Hart. Hi, Phil. The site is only getting better and better. Thanks for all your great work. My question is, how do I know I'm using the correct paint? Most of the time, the colour callouts are for paint I don't have. And when I use the chart, the colours are nowhere near. Now, it's funny you mentioned that because I was asked a question about doing the Terminator this week. And to be honest, he was a non-member and asking about, and he said, I haven't watched the videos and all the rest of it, but the colour of the paints looks nothing like what's in the manual. And I basically said that I wouldn't be too worried about the colours you're specifically using if you're going to weather a model. Now, if you're going for a factory fresh, you know, paint job, then obviously you want the colours to be pretty much as they are as they roll out of the factory. After that, all bets are off because paints weather and fade in two specific ways. They either bleach, so if you're dealing one in sand colours, it's going to be in a sandy environment, the sun will bleach the hell out of everything, okay? Armour especially, it cooks, it gets hot, it gets sandblasted by just the desert terrain and everything else like that. So it's going to have that sort of washed out, lighter look to it. And then in the same way, if you get something that's in like, you know, European theatres with mud and water and everything else, they tend to darken down, okay, just because of the grime levels and everything else, and being in a more damp environment, okay, and things like that. So the paints themselves will look totally different. And age of paint has a massive thing to do with it as well. If it's just come out the paint shop, it's going to look lovely, but pretty soon they're going to look quite tarnished. Also lighting, okay, so you've got all these different variables about going in. There used to be a classic example of a load of Eurofighter Typhoons, RAF1s, all in a line. And the sun was in a certain place with shadowing and clouds and everything, that the ones at the far end were in bright sunlight, the ones closer to the camera were in shade, and you had all the different ones before, and it went from looking like gunship grey close to the camera, very dark because they're in shade, to completely almost looking white at the other end because they're in bright sunlight and all the rest of it. And that is the same with any type of paint job. So you have got what I would call a variable in there. Okay, so it's a bit like when you look at paint manufacturers, and like you're saying about, you know, obviously olive drab, classic example, you can get 10 companies and you get 10 different shades of olive drab. That doesn't mean any of them are wrong, because technically it's still olive drab. As long as they're in the ballpark of saying it's olive drab, then that's absolutely fine, okay? Shades of and variables of is what make the hobby so good, okay? Because that way, no two models are going to look alike, like two pieces of armour won't look alike, two aircraft won't look alike, and everything else, because modelers use different things, different techniques, okay? And then you're into the situation of actually using the paint itself. So if you're in a situation where you've pre-shaded and you've gone over a very light grey, yet you've got another modeler and he's gone over black base, say, something else like that, you're going to get different shades of paint immediately are going to come out. Also, it depends on how thick the paint is going down. If it's a particularly thin coat, it's going to look a lighter colour of it and things like that. So I wouldn't be pigeonholed too much into the correct colours, because honestly, I've been doing this so long now, I've learnt that there isn't a specific correct colour. You need to be in the ballpark of, okay, and I'm a great believer in it, okay, so you just want to find a colour that is that type of shade, okay, and then as soon as you're in that ballpark you can go for it. Classic example is the Terminator. I know it's too light, technically it's too light a shade, but I intend to weather it, so it's going to have washes over it, so it's going to darken down. And then probably next week, I won't get onto it until next week now, but when that gets weathered in and it has dry brushing, it's going to have some oils onto it, it's going to get darker, and I've allowed for that, so I've lightened the paint or used lighter paints, things like that, just so when it gets darker it doesn't suddenly look really dark. Because in some ways, when I worked on my Sherman, that's the over olive drab, I wanted it to look like Fury, where it has that real almost black look to it and very dark. So by using oils over the olive drab and all the different colours like that, it really gave it a black look to it, and to this day it's still sat there, it's totally dry now and all the rest of it, but it still looks very, very dark. So I was going for that look. But if you weren't going for that look, and let's say you wanted the lighter green, it would be too dark for you, okay? So from that point of view, then you have to think, well, okay, well, how can I stop it getting to dark? If you had it lighter green to start with, as it goes down through the shades, you're going to end up with something more green than black, okay? And things like that. So I wouldn't be too overall concerned about it. Most paint charts, with the exception of a few, you know, there's a few dodgy ones out there on the internet, which, you know, you look at them and like, it's grey and green, and you're like, well, which one is it? But if you take the overall, okay, and think, okay, well, it's in a grey, and then go for it. Vallejo pretty much have got every colour covered now. There isn't that many gaps that they haven't got in the market. Tamiya have always got gaps for modern stuff for some reason. They've never really filled those. And Guns, obviously, on the other hand. But you've got other manufacturers coming out by the ton of them now. Obviously, you've got the MiG ammo stuff. You've got AK stuff now flooding the market. All these other paint manufacturers. So really, you can go out and get. And the Terminator, for instance, I did have every intention when I was going to do it of actually buying the ACAM paint set, because they actually do a set for that particular piece of armour. They actually call it the Terminator paint set. So it's got all the shades and the various, and I'm thinking, yeah, but why? I'm only going to do one, so you know the chances are I'm not going to use those colours again, so I'm going to spend £12 on a paint set and then that'll be it. You know, it's never going to be used again really. So I've got the paints here, I might as well do them, you know, because at the end of the day it's hull red, which is what the darker colours are. We've got the light brown for the sandy colours, and then the sand is the standard sand colour as it goes on that one. So they're all colours I'd probably use again. So from that point of view, it's money well spent. Okay, so Chris Regan, he says, "Hi Phil, not exactly a modelling question. My wife and I are planning a trip to the UK this year to attend Telford." Wow, well done. She's really excited. She might not be saying that after she's come out of Telford. We're coming from the USA and wondering where to stay. I've really no idea what city to reserve my hotel room. I figured I'd ask you. I'm planning to visit the World War II, Battle of Britain museums, monuments, etc. Can you give me some suggestions of locations? Well, because you're coming from the US, let's face it, the UK isn't that big. It's only going to take you 4 hours to drive one side to the other. And I live right down in the southwest bit, the foot, if you like, that hangs out the bottom, and the very southwest tip, okay? And it still only takes us 4 hours to get to Telford, which is sort of central England and all the rest of it, and that's from the longest part away. So, you know, the thing is, around London you've got things like Hendon, which is a brilliant museum. It's free to get in as well, and all the rest of it. That's pretty much a must to do Hendon if you're in the UK. Then you obviously got the Imperial War Museums and things like that around that area. And if you're down in Hendon, then you can go down to Kent, where you've got a lot of the Battle of Britain stuff down there as well. Down our neck of the woods, which is, you know, would be a 3-hour trip down, you've got Yeovilton, RNS Yeovilton, which is the Fleet Air Arm Museum, which if you're anything into naval sort of, you know, that type of thing, then that's an absolute must. The Second World War stuff, sea fires and all the things like that is absolutely amazing down there. Duxford, you know, if you want a list of them, I'll do a list for you separately. I won't bore you through, but I'd be saying Hendon, Duxford are an absolute must. When you're up in Telford, Cosford is literally next door. It's 2 minutes down the road. That's a must as well, but you'll be there anyway. You know, it is that thing, staying somewhere sort of central-ish. You know, depends which way you want to go. I'm just trying to think where is upper a little bit. Sort of Oxford area, you could cover lots of things from that area and you're not a million miles away from everything. And obviously you'll probably fly into Gatwick or Heathrow, so I would say something around Oxford way. And then, you know, yeah, you'd be pretty good. I'm sure the guys, and we'd love to meet up with you as well. So we'll see you obviously this year up at Telford, but I know the guys would pop in and give you lots of suggestions of places you have to go and see. Okay, so Spencer, really large pots of Tamiya paint. They're available here, not in all colours, but most of them. This is last week's show. We were talking about the Tamiya did the bigger bottles, the 23ml bottles instead of the 10. Yeah, as you said, the 23ml bottles are over here. They are additional labels with German health warnings. Probably why they're not available in the UK in 23ml size. I don't know why they just disappeared. As I say, in the 90s they were everywhere. I used to buy all my, I used to go through gallons of XFs, 54, 53, things like that, and I always used to buy the big ones, but as I say, then they sort of stopped. I don't know exactly why they did that. Okay, on to the next page, page 3 if you're following us. Bigger bottles, right, the guys are talking about that in there. Okay, Gareth says, "Hi Phil, quick question. I bought an Evolution CR Plus about 3 months ago. Used it a dozen times or so. Only used it for acrylic, never hot stuff through the airbrush. I've always tried to clean it the best I can. The problem is now I'm getting bubbles from the paint coming through the trigger." Yes, that's right. I'm getting small bubbles of paint on the airbrush coming out the colour cup. Right. That sounds like you've got a seal problem, big time problem. I can honestly say I've never had paint come back to the trigger assembly on one of my airbrushes. What we're talking about, I assume you're saying it's coming back to this point here, and it's coming all the way back. So I'll be able to get the back of this off. It was tight on me the other day. Yeah, I have a look at. I've got a video up there about changing the seals. I would unscrew it, take it out, have a look at them and just see if they're laying in. You might have got one that's gone like a funny shape, or it's pinched incorrectly, or it's been over tightened at some point in the factory or something else like that, and that's the problem you've got. Have a look at that seal video. As I say, I'll try and dig out the link for it, put it down, unless one of the guys will jump on me before I get to you. Okay, but there is a video, there's 2 of them actually, about changing the seals in these things. Have a look at those, change the seals. It does seem funny that you're getting them back. Coming back through the trigger part. This is a whole trigger with a curved brass guide in the body. So your torquing actually comes right the way back here. Paint still comes out the nozzle when I spray, but I do make a huge mess. I'm not surprised. I've stripped it. What am I missing? Do you think its O-ring's gone? I think it probably is. Sending the airbrush back to the UK is almost an impossible task. To be honest, you know, I'm quite happy to do a Google Hangout with you and talk you through doing it and all the rest of it. It's very straightforward. These things are like bulletproof. You know, I know they are, you know, they look expensive. They are expensive, but I still chuck them around because they are literally German made. They're like tanks. They're fine. It sounds like you've got a seal literally is doing something a bit funny. If it's a CR Plus, you get 3 seals. Maybe there's one missing and it's causing slack in there and it's managing to travel through. I'm not too sure, but definitely we will sort you out. Okay, Wade says, hi Phil, been wanting to pass on for quite some time. A recent dialogue re-primers has got me fired up. I tried a Tamiya primer in their spray cam. It's one of the best, as well known. Spray application is not as effective as using a primer through an airbrush. You tend to use more of it, that's what we're saying, okay? There is an alternative, however. Tamiya make their own surface primer in a 40ml bottles. If mixed with lacquer, I'm not aware of this. Steve mentioned it the other day and it makes sense now. Lacquer thinner yellow top will equate to approximately 6 aerosol cans, quite a savings. I've used the mix decanted into a dropper bottle for many years and it's never let me down. Wow, I wasn't sure of this. Okay, I will get hold of some. I know Steve's getting hold of some and he did say send me a bottle. It makes sense now because me and him were having a conversation. He obviously read your post. So yes, I will definitely give it a whirl. I haven't heard of Tamiya making a bottle of primer to use, but I will definitely give it a whirl. It does sound to be very, very good. Okay, Spencer. Hi Phil. I don't know how practical it would be. And it could end up making extra work for you considering an idea for the tutorials, back to basics and collections of little snippets. I'm thinking of the great, I'm going to paraphrase this because it does go on for quite some time. Basically you're saying about taking little snippets from the videos and making them into one video so it's more concise and all the rest of it. Okay, so yeah, I can understand that, but yes, it is a thing of going through all the videos because we do have now 1,400 videos. That's the trouble. So going through them all now is an absolute nightmare. I'm trying to go through them, like we're updating the tutorials and making them a little bit more precise and punchy and all things like that. So hopefully that will help out a little bit. But yeah, you can take snippets from each video. But as we said about before, in all my video builds, I try and do this thing where, you know, for instance, on the MiG, it was all about using Vallejo. It was Vallejo right the way through. Some of it didn't work. Some of it worked an absolute treat, okay? Down here on the Terminator, we're going to do all the weathering with clay wash, which might sound like I'm just flogging my clay wash, but I haven't done it now in over a year. That's how long ago we did a build with the clay wash, because I've been using everybody else's, but now it's time to go back and using mine. I like it, it works for me, so that's why I'm going to do it on this one. So yeah, that is the point, that each build has a specific theme, and that's what we've done. So, you know, going back through some of them, the Intruder is all about scratch building, okay, and then you look at other things. The Typhoon, it was more about in-flight and certainly with putting LEDs and lights in them. The other Typhoon, all about scratch building and weathering. So each has a specific thing, but to take snippets out of it, oh, that would be horrendous to try and edit all of that in. And that would just take me away. I'd be editing what I'd done before and going through. I think it'd just be a little bit too much to do at this point. And I'm hoping the tutorials will fill those gaps anyway. Right, Dennis, Phil, regarding the new Smell Model Air paints used on the Terminator, can you tell me the batch number on the bottles? I'm trying to understand if they've changed the colours at the scented paints, or if it's yet another change from the paint formula. I don't know. So, batch numbers. Where is batch number? Conforms to... I'm guessing that the batch number must be the J0912. Let me just see what the others say on them. J37. So I'm guessing that's the month. I don't know what the J stands for. The J must be the year, I assume. 171B. Let me just grab one of my really old ones I know won't smell. This must be an old one. Yeah, see, the chances are these ones with a batch number on them, because my old ones don't have a batch number. It just says conforms to, but doesn't actually have that date on there. 17th of the 1st, I assume that is. 30th of the 7th, 12th and the 9th. I'm assuming that's what it is. The older ones don't have this batch number down by the barcode. But as I said, maybe something to ask Vallejo to find out exactly when they changed over. Just from my point of view, spraying that on the Terminator was just like spraying Tamiya. I'll be honest with you, the coverage was absolutely phenomenal, very good coverage, and you could thin it quite a lot before anything happened. So, you know, kudos to Vallejo. I absolutely just loved spraying the Terminator. It was a joy to do. I know there were new bottles, so as we know, as soon as you open them, they tend to get a little bit, you know, a bit cranky with you. But it just seemed to be the smell, the environment, everything else like that. It just worked really well. And if I'm honest, it does seem to clean up easier as well. But again, it could be it's brand new paint. There's no lumps, bumps, stickiness and all things like that in there. Okay, so Craig says, quick question about, sorry, that was, yeah, it's another one. Hi Phil, quick question, new Vallejo paints and the Terminator. How much better the new Vallejo paint spray and cover its smell? Is it the way the bottles in the hobby store and the old ones? Oh, there's graphics that are different. To be honest, I've gone, without going through mine to find out what they are, it's very hard to see. The only thing I can tell is down here on the barcode, you got just down on the bottom, there's a date. It's like J0912. I'm gathering that's probably a year, month and day, where the old ones don't. That's the only thing I can see, because, you know, we've got, probably do a history lesson here. Where are we? We've got down here, probably got others, but you might be able to see we've got black labels with nothing on them and various things down on here. We've got this one that doesn't sort of have the shield round them, but this one's a good one, does have a shield round it. So I'm not too sure, if we're honest. I think that's really old, that's old, that's a new one. So yeah, it's a little bit tricky to know as and when they've moved them around and done things to them and everything else like that. It'd just be one of those things. I think maybe contact them and ask them and find out exactly what they're doing. But as for batch numbers and stuff like that, I can't tell. They have seemed to change some of the colours. Some of the guys put up on the forum that there seems to be, you know, this is whatever grey it was and this is grey. The numbers are the same, paint colour is different. Again, I think it may be just a thing of going around, having a look, checking them all out. Okay, Ralph says, Phil, so glad you're continuing to warm to the Vallejo new acrylic metal colours. I was anxious for you to use them and to listen to your assessment of the paints. I used them on my 1/48 scale P47 bubble top and loved them. I had no problems with the black primer, sprayed it neat, my Pachi airbrush. However, I take their advice, X1 primer. I would say the X1 primer is better than theirs, but that's personal genuine. To lay on the vlog, you mentioned Vallejo would not achieve a high gloss finish of AK's Extreme Metal. My question would be, with the exception of research experimental factor fresh aircraft, wouldn't find most aluminium finishes oxidized, be not sporting a mirror-like finish. I'm excited to try the new Extreme Metal paints and how my new AK Black primer has finally arrived. Any hints on using them? Anything? Really glad you like the Vallejo. I do like it, and it's here, and you can see it's a lovely finish on it. It looks fantastic. It really is very nice stuff to work with. When you see the final part on this, I'm going to wrap it on till the cows come home on how good it is. Trust me, it is very nice stuff. It's not AK stuff. It is extremely close. That is my thing. I don't think it is as good as the AK stuff. It's not as easy as to spray as the AK stuff. But that's the only two downsides to using the Vallejo metal colour stuff. The things I love about it. Firstly, the smell. There is no smell, there's no problem in my environment. I was spraying that stuff many a coat, to be honest, and I was even spraying it on my bench and not in the spray bay for doing the mottled effects and different colours and panels and things like that. I had no problem with it at all. The other massive plus for this stuff is the actual thing of being able to handle it. It is as hard as nails. This stuff, honestly, I reckon you could sand it and it's going to repel. You could rub it with abrasive very fine. Like if I was to hit it with a polisher, I don't think the polisher would actually get through it at all. So that's the thing with that one. Excuse me. You know, at the end of the day, I think it's going to be one of those things. If you're in the acrylic group, which to be honest I am, as you know, I love it. I think it's great. If you're an enamel user and use lacquer paints all the time, you're probably going to go down the AK route because you're used to using them, you don't mind using them, you're in an environment where people don't mind it and everything else. To be honest, when I'm spraying the hotter products, it stinks the house out. I've got 3 spray booths back there. They're exhausting and venting. It still smells. And I don't like it. I do this day in, day out, every day of my life. I'm trying to avoid the hotter products. And I know that is the big thing, that technically it's still a hot product and it's still a contaminant. And I should be wearing a mask all the time and everything else like that. But I'm doing the best I can with what I've got. Okay, so I'm trying to make my environment as safe and as pleasant as possible. And everybody else who comes here and everything else like that. The other thing as well with it, I have to say, dust around in the environment. As I said, I did some of it here. Normally you go around afterwards and you're like, silver, touch anything? None of that at all with it. So it worked really, really well. Would I use it again? Absolutely, in a heartbeat. Now I know how to use it. Thin it, that's the thing. Thin it 50-50 with Tamiya X28. Light, dusty, misty coat. Bring it up very gently. Don't flood it. You'll absolutely have a ball with it. It'll be absolutely fine and it'll give you a fantastic, lovely finish. And I still maintain, if I didn't have that god-awful bloody primer underneath here, it would have worked an absolute treat, because I do think that it's actually a very nice finish. It was a pain in the ass to photograph, so I know it was good, because the 104 is just the same. It's just when you do put the 104 and this one together, I don't know, the 104 just has that, I don't know, metal luster look to it. That one, it has it, but it just doesn't have it on the same scale. Okay, so Dave asks, hi Phil, I have a follow question, I have a follow question for the live show, as well as your MIG build currently in progress. When you sprayed Tamiya X1 Gloss Black, did you use a thinner or spray it neat? No, definitely need a thinner. It won't probably come out your airbrush, or it won't come out of a 0.2. I thin it usually 50-50, it's my standard way. Tamiya X28, air pressure a little bit lower, a little bit closer, and you put it down so it goes on wet. So don't do that thing like you often hear about me spraying dry. Look at the gloss tutorials, that's what it's about. You put it down so it's wet, 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 wet. And if you're worried about runs and that, hit it with a hairdryer like I do. Literally, I went after it, hairdryer, just to dry it down. No problem at all with it. And to be honest, it just had one heavy coat, one light coat, and it was fine, no problem at all. Okay, Robbie says, Phil, just watch your MIG. This is trouble because you're a little bit behind now. It seems ages ago because I finished it last week. When I watched the MIG Part 4, it's advisable to remove the glue marks, especially on the ring roots. Wing roots before priming. Yes, definitely. Primer, as I say, when you're into the primer stage, it is literally looking for any imperfections, any sink marks, and all the problems you might have. Okay, and it's going to be so the paint can stick to it, or because we're using the black to reflect some light back and things like that. So that's the thing with that one. At the end of the day though, don't bury yourself to have that mirror perfect finish and all the rest of it, because primer can hide some of those little faults. So if you have got a wing root problem, to be honest, this one we didn't have a wing root problem at all. It worked an absolute dream on this one. But if you do have, you know, perhaps little glue spot marks things in there and you're thinking, I don't know, give it a coat of primer. If you can still see them, give it another coat of primer. You might just smooth them out and give them a slightly nicer effect and everything else like that with your model. But as I say, use the primer for your advantage, okay? But really, by the time you get to the primer stage, and it's something we're going to talk about when we get to tutorials, hopefully I'll do it Thursday, is to be in that situation where, okay, this is, you know, I've gone as good as I think I can now. I can't see anything else, so we're going to put the primer on, and that's our safety net, because then I can look at it and say, yeah, I really need to take care of that because I can see it now. We really want to get rid of it. So when the paint's on, we know we're not going to have a problem, okay? So really, when you've got the primer down, you're looking at it and you can't find any faults with it, then you're absolutely fine. But I'm a great believer in, don't be too uber critical on yourself, because don't forget you can hide imperfections with weathering and stuff like that. It's just when you're dealing with sort of the natural metal finish look, everything shows up 10 times worse. To be honest, putting a wash on it is almost the worst thing you can do, because if you have any imperfections, it suddenly goes, here's the fault, because it's got a panel line in it where it shouldn't have, or there's a fingerprint. The wash will collect there, and because it's on a reflective surface, it just looks like, you know, a CSI job, okay, and it'll make it stand up. Okay, Mark asks, a couple of questions, Phil. What size needle do you use for airbrushing and why? I use the 0.2 in all of mine, apart from the Evo, which is this one, which has a 0.4. This has a bigger one in there, which, to be honest, we're using Stynol Res through it, and it's all right. But all my standard airbrushes has the 0.2. Again, it's personal choice. In the old days, I was a great believer in the smaller the needle, the finer the detail. Now I know it is not the case. Okay, you get to anything less than a 0.4, you're really wasting, you know, your time. You know, if you go 0.35 and 0.2, I think are perfect. Okay, if you're going to go for like a Vallejo, Harder and Steenbeck do a 0.15, I think it's too fine, because acrylic it doesn't like it. It can't clear it through. It gets a little bit spitty, especially in warm conditions, things like that. That's more for inks and artwork and stuff like that. So I think if you're using Iwata, 0.35 needle is perfect for scale modelling, and obviously for, you know, Harder and Steenbeck, I think the 0.4 is probably a little bit overkill, but you could use it a 0.2. Okay, the thing with it is also, what are you modelling? If you're just doing 1/32 stuff, then obviously a 0.4 would be fine, or a 0.5. But if you're doing small stuff, you do want to have a smaller spray pattern, and at the end of the day, this is what this is all about. If I go full tilt on the 0.2, we're going to have something about this wide at the end of it. Okay, so you're going to be about this wide. If we did a 0.4, we're going to probably be about that. Okay, but the business end, closer to the airbrush as it cones in, it's going to be the same no matter what scale you're doing. But you have to thin and change the paint, because if it's got a bigger nozzle, it can oof through a lot more. Again, have a look at what, I don't know which video it was now, but I did a video with the 0.4 and 0.2 full tilt emptying a dump of colour cup, and obviously the 0.4 dumps it 3 times faster than the 0.2. And that's purely a volume going through your paint. But I would highly recommend 0.35 or 0.2. No problem at all. You'll be fine for any type of modelling, from 1/72 stuff right the way up to the 1/32, you know, and do it like that. It's nice to have another airbrush with a bigger nozzle in case you want to do gloss work or primer, because obviously you're doing gloss work, it's all about volume. You want to put down nice big wet lines. If you're doing it with a small needle, you get a very small pattern and you have to go over it lots, and you're drying it. You know, you want to be nice, pass over it, nice and wet. It dries, gives you a nice gloss finish. So yeah, that would be my point for that. Okay, second part of the question was, I've been having trouble with paint drying on the tip of my airbrush. The paints I use are normally Model Air or AK Interactive Air. Do you have any advice? Tiny bit more thinners always works. Okay, so if you're not thinning them, thin them. That'll stop that. Or, as we've always spoken about here, is to stick a little bit of flow improver. This is like an oil. It's the only way I can describe it. Somebody said to me the other day, what is it then? It's like soap. And I was like, no, I think it's more like an oil. It's like a linseed oil, or, you know, something like that. Because it's an oil, it slows down the drying time everywhere. So it also slows down the drying time of the paint. But I've had this bottle since I've been airbrushing, and we're only probably, I don't know, 20% into it. It's literally a drop in a colour cup when it's really hot. Mix it thoroughly, use it as part of the thinner. So don't do 50-50, then add that. You want to do, you know, add your thinners into this, a drop of that into there, mix it up, and then do 50-50 if you're using Tammy or somebody else's paint to thicken it up, okay, and then do it that way, okay, because it will thin as well and make things a little bit more translucent when you spray. Okay, Steve Wright says, hi Phil, I see the MiG-21 build used some reamers to put the riveting in. Couldn't catch the maker's name. Can you tell me the maker's name, or if anyone sells reamers? Thanks. To be honest, I don't know. They are. I bought them off of eBay, I don't know, a couple of years ago now. It's by Unitool. Okay, and it's that one. Oh, the camera sees it. Okay. Yeah. Again, I think it was peanuts. It was. Pretty sure it was an English company, but these come along like these. They're like dental ones. The great thing is though, they will fit in a Dremel if you wanted to do it that way. And I remember if I bought them correctly for when we did the Star Destroyer, I needed holes obviously for putting all those holes into it. But yeah, they are absolutely invaluable. Again, quality, don't buy the cheapest ones because I've had them in the past and they just snap. These I've had now and I use them a lot, to be honest, and they just don't snap, especially this small one, which is a point. I think this is, the scaling on these is 0.3 to 1.2. Made in Japan, Union Tool. It's got a number, but I don't know if that's the one, but it's 000107. But that could mean anything, okay? Put this down in there like that. Little case, handy. Again, it's one of these tools where probably sit in your drawer, you never touch it, but when you need one, you really need one. And for years I used to have a collection of little tiny drill bits, but they snap. These don't. That's the whole point to it. I don't think these were much money either. I think they were literally under a tenner for a set, but you can buy, I know some of the guys in the forum did them maybe last year before, you got a set of like 50 or something in a case, all different sizes, all color coded, so you have the little bars so you know what colors they are and all the rest of it, but it is written on the shaft of it as well. Right, okay. Daniel says, hi Phil, how would you suggest painting and weathering the exhaust on World War II aircraft to create a realistic effect? Okay, you've got a couple of options with that. First of all is, what scale are you doing? If you're doing tiny scale, you can actually buy colours such like dark iron, which I think is always a good one to sort of start with, because you want that sort of burnt metal colour to start with in the first place, okay? And then you've got an option, so if you wanted to make it look more silvery, you can dry brush it, okay, and that will just change the colour. The texture that you'll get on there will allow you to change it. And then the other way, if you want to go for rusty types of exhaust and things like that, then you can come in with pigments over the top and do them like that, just to give it that sort of rusty texture. Exhaust on aircraft, I think, is very up to the modeler themselves, what he wants to see, because I've seen some guys have big rusty exhaust and you think, would it really be rusty? You know, and I've seen 1/24 scale aircraft with rusty exhaust, and I think, I don't know, every one I've seen hasn't got a rusty exhaust because of the heat going through it all the time. But they do have that sort of, you know, the heat blooms and stuff in there. You look at showbirds like Spitfires and Mustangs, they have like polished exhausts and that, and they have that blue with the heat in there and stuff like that. And I often think, now is that because it's been polished up? So I'm never quite sure in which way you do it, because you look at photos, and usually because they're in black and white of World War II, very hard to work out exactly what they are. If you're doing exhausts on armour, stuff like that, then normally they're rusty. Okay, so you're going to go through doing it as a rust technique, so you might want to start with a rusty colour, okay, and then, you know, you can then overcoat it, do chipping effects, things like that on them. But with aircraft it's somewhat different, and with me, when I do it, For instance, my Spitfire I've got down there, we did it in a sort of, it's almost like a brassy colour, so it was dark with brass over the top of it. The Mustang is very much like a very dark aluminium colour onto it. Again, I'm just looking at all my ones to see which colours I've done them in now. Yeah, it's up to you really exactly how you do it. Got money on there. The Spitfire, to be honest, we did it in that XF84 as the base colour, because it's like a dark burnt metal colour, and go from that. You obviously can buy, and one of these is, if I remember rightly, yeah, you've got things like exhaust manifold. Again, I know that's the manifold for the exhaust and things like that, but again, that to me is far too goldy colour. I think it would be more worn down than that. That's why, you know, originally we used a bit of a mix for that for the tail on the MiG, but then I looked at references and they're not that dark anyway. They tend to be silvery and stuff like that. But again, it's personal choice. Have a look around, see what you feel looks right to you, and then go for that. But I don't think there's any cut and dried, because certain things are different in different lights. I know in some ways I've done them brown and then dry brushed metal over the top of them, and so as I say, different things. I've got a mega build coming up in the summer. I don't want to mention what it is yet, but it is a World War II aircraft, 132nd, and it's going to have every single aftermarket extra that is available, and trust me, there's tons for this thing, and that's got lots of exhaust, so we'll be looking at that one quite in detail then. Okay, so John says, hi Phil, do you think black stynel res would work for metallic paints such as AK or Vallejo? Yes, in a nutshell. I have it now, look. The bottles have all turned up now, look, we've got them. Where's the other one? And a white one. So look, I'm well covered now, we're totally stocked up thanks to Barwell. Right, so I'm a great believer in the... Okay, I'll give you the full spread on this because I've been asked about it a lot and I have dodged the question. It seems to be that this new fad, I'm going to call it a fad, and I know everyone, oh, I do it all the time and it works brilliantly, great, okay? But doing everything black as a primer and then lightening it up in post. You've got the do-gooders are on the sites now saying, oh, that's how it should be, it's more realistic. Really? It's an old thing, you know, this was around in the 70s. I think that's because they didn't have grey primer back then, but there's lots of black paint. But it's just another way to do the same thing. I pre-shade black lines everywhere to give shadow into a paint, okay? Break up paint, that's all it is. Doesn't matter if it's on this or anything else, because it's on the bottom of here just to break it up and, you know, make it look darker, lighter and things like that. That's all it's for. But you get guys who will do black and then they'll come around and they'll have to do like a what we call like marbling effect or mottling effect to get that great thing, and then they blend it over, and I'm thinking, right, you've just spent half your life doing all of this for what I do in 10 minutes. You know, I can't see the point of it. But again, it's modelling. If it works for you, knock yourself out. It's just for me, I got better things to do. Okay. Black though has its place with metals. That's where I think, yes, you should do it. For instance, if you're going to do anything bright metal, I would highly recommend using a black, because we spoke about it before. It's a bit like a mirror, has a backing is black, because it's reflecting the light. Okay, it absorbs and reflects. That's actually what the black does. It gives it a solid look behind. So in some ways, when you're putting down your, you know, metallic finishes, if it's a little bit, if it was going over grey and you had like a lighter bit, it's not quite as good coverage, you're not going to see it. With black, it will stand out and it will look dark. So you give it another coat and it locks it all together. And also you're doing that thing where we're talking about black on white as well. So anything that's bright or light, I can make a little slogan here, if it's bright or light, use black, okay? Because it will give you a more solid look. It's a bit like when we do canopy bars, okay? And I always say, right, you've masked it, first thing you do, put a coat of black onto it, because then when you put the paint over the top, it gives it a solid look. So it looks like a piece of metal. Because how often have we've all done it, guilty of it, I used to do it, you just paint grey on, or blue, and then you look at it and the light travels through it, and it doesn't look solid. It looks like a piece of plastic being painted, okay? But you put black down, gives it a solid look. So if you're doing undercarriage and it's white, I would say prime it first in black, then paint it white, because it's a solid heavy look to it. When we do the airliners, we're going to be starting on those next week. they're going to all be primed in black, and I'm going to spray white right over the top of them. I haven't quite decided on the schemes yet, but one of them is going to be white, okay, and things like that, and it'll give you a nice solid look. So yes, I would highly recommend doing the metallics. Now I know the guys out there say, yeah, but if you were doing like a dark, dull, you know, metallic, something else like that, you don't need it. I don't think it hurts. I think it's easier to spray a metallic finish over black because you can see exactly what you got going on. Just my thought to it. And if you are using with the metal colours, definitely Stynal Res works a treat, because I tested it afterwards on an old scrap wing just to see what it was, and that was grey primer, and it gave a beautiful, you know, smooth finish, which is something we spoke about at the end of that one. If you flood it, it goes gritty and horrible. If you don't put enough down, it's patchy and gritty looking. Get it just right, it's a really nice finish. Okay, Stephen asked, hi Phil, any chance of a demo on how to do a winter wash scheme? Did you know Flory models used to do a winter camo wash? Funny that. If you want to do it, it's this stuff, light. Just that we decided that I didn't want another range of it, so we did it separate. Yes, there's a couple of ways of doing it. Obviously, you could use the acrylic way. So paint your model as you would, do it in green, whatever. Hairspray right over the top, or a lacquer, okay? You could use a chipping medium, but you know, hairspray technique works just as well. Overcoat it with white, quite thin, doesn't have to be heavy. You're not trying to, like, you know, make it solid white, right over it, and then scrub the hell out of it and it chips back. It's pretty straightforward, no problem. The other way, of course, is just take a bottle of our whitewash, okay, and then slow air pressure, light dusty coats, don't flood it, just spray it over the top, and it is a lot harder wearing, shall we say, than certain competitors' ones, which they're like dust and fall off. Ours doesn't, it welds itself on, and you can really scrub at it to get a nice thick white and everything else. Short of my Sherman getting a coat, that's the trouble. It's saying, can you do one? It means I've got to build something and then show it doing it. That's the trouble, because I haven't got anything to demo a winter wash on. Unless no, I couldn't do it to that really. I have got that Mark IV Panzer down there we did many years ago. I suppose that could have a winter camo wash. Don't know. Leave it with me. I have a think on that. It depends if I want to wreck another tank in the process of turning it into another Buster. Okay. Robert says, hi Phil. What is the best way to do post shading? Is this done after the final paint is finished? I've tried it with poor results. Wondering if you could explain the mix pressures or even do a tutorial. Have a look at the MIG. Again, I post shaded it with a darker metallic to give the shading effect. Now, a couple of things to remember when you're doing post shading. You could wreck your model. That is the biggest thing to know. The reason I do pre-shading, which everybody hates and all the rest of it, it seems to be the thing, oh, you pre-shade, do you? Oh gosh. But quite frankly, it's a safe alternative, because if it does go wrong, you overcoat it. You post shade, it goes wrong, you have to repaint it. That's my point, okay? And then all that black work underneath gets hidden. No, but the thing is, the secret to all your post shading is a bit like when we say about doing washes, solid washes right the way over, when we use acrylics and oils. If you remember, I used to say about thin it down so you can't see it. Same way with your paint. What you want to do is come in with the shade you're using. So let's just assume you were doing this MIG. Another option I could have done, instead of post shading it with another metal color, I could have done it with something like Tamiya Smoke or a very, very thinned black, okay? So what I would do is I would make it so when you put your brush in and you look at the bristles, I can see all my bristles. So it's like dirty thinners, all right? Air pressure right down, because I don't want to have a spray pattern this wide. It needs to be nice and tight. Okay, so we're going to lower the air pressure. For me, we're using acrylics, my usual way, and all the rest of it. You're probably going to be looking at around about sort of 12 psi, 12 to 15 psi. Okay, you want your thinners to be around about 70%, 80% thinners to your paint. Okay, nice and close. And then the way I would technically do it, if it's bust, I'd have a bit of kitchen towel or a bit of paper, spray on there, happy how the flow is, and you've got good constant flow with your airbrush, i.e. if it's spitting, stopping, things like that, you don't want to go near your model, because if it coughs on your model and suddenly, you know, you're going to end up with a splat. So light dusty, and then start working it around. Every now and again, come off, paper towel. You've seen me do it, flush your airbrush, full pull on the trigger, so you know it's still running nice, clean, everything's all right. And every now and again, also a little tip, get some kitchen roll, have it to hand, Okay, so when you're spraying, you're coming in and you just, yeah, I've got the pinch clean on the end here. You just come in, pinch the end so it's nice and clean, because if you get build up on the end, it can affect your pattern as well, and then that way you're just going to go in. But the whole point is, one pass you don't see it, second pass, or is there something, third, and you're building up. That way if you do go wrong, one pass doesn't matter, second, third pass, then it starts to build on it. Okay, so like we did this one, you'll see it in here. I think it was on that side of the wing, it showed it particularly well. You can physically see it going on and in, but now in theory if you look at it, you shouldn't really see it. And this is because what I like to do is, like, you know, some people will call it a fancy name like filtering or something, but I overshoot the entire thing in that colour just to blend that down, so you don't have a hard edge of it going around the model, so it looks like it's just part of the weathered of the actual aircraft or the armour or whatever it is. Okay, but to be honest, I'm probably going to do a little bit of post shading just down on here, because where we've done splinter, because it's 3 or 4 coats of paint, it's quite hard to see some of the areas. So I might end up with, which I'll tell you what, I'll do it anyway, I'll show you a little bit of post shading next week when we're actually working on the Terminator, just to blow it in around these areas so you can see it going in the panels, giving detail, shading work and everything in, causing shadows quite naturally and things like that. But as I said, it's that thing, it's very hard to say air pressure. What air pressure do you use? What paint do you use? One thing I learned really quickly, because I am self-taught with airbrushing, nobody showed me, is don't copy everybody else, because what works for one person probably won't work for you. They might have a totally different setup. So the bit where they're telling you, oh, I shoot everything at 18.26 psi and I'm thinning at a ratio of 97%, you know, thinners, you know, 3% paint and all of this, I take it all with a pinch of salt, because it might work for them, but for you it might not work. Okay, so do what you do, what works for you, and then adjust it slightly. Just play with it a little bit just to see how it would work. Okay, so where are we? Page 5. How are we doing on time? Yeah, I think we're all right. Okay, page 5. Okay, Stuart asks, hi, please could you help me? I wish to do a 1/48 scale frogfoot in Iraqi Air Force colours. What colours should I use? As I'm finding it hard to find references, I tend to use acrylic paints. Hope you can help. Kind regards, Stu. Not off the top of my head sat right here. I have built quite a few Iraqi aircraft in the past. I will dig out my references and I will post them up at the bottom on here for you. Okay. As I say, you might know I did a couple of MiG-21s. One got crushed as a commission many years ago. Things like that. So yeah, it's one of those things. I haven't got anything to hand right here, right now. Yeah, I'll have to look it up. Sand. Right, hi Phil, I've been watching a lot of your reviews and opinions on the different kinds of paint. What you like, what you don't like. I've not heard any opinions on the Tester line of paints. Many of the Tester, mainly the Model Master line. Have you ever tried these? If so, what is your opinion? I'm in the US and the majority of stores carry the line of paints. Yeah, good point actually. There was Testers or Model Master were brought in by Creative about 2 years ago. And I got really excited because I'm on their mailing list and they said, yeah, they're all coming over. They do a great range of paints and I have used them and got on very well with their acrylics. So I was quite excited. Then it turns out they're not bringing in the acrylic range, they're only bringing in the enamel, which I have got the enamels. I think I've still got some around here actually. Yeah, Model Master, here we are. So yeah, we got the Model Master with the enamels because they're readily available. Then that was it. The UK distributor stopped doing them. They don't take them in anymore for whatever reason. The acrylics have never been over here. I have used acrylics a couple of times for various things. They work fantastic. I think your Model Master are very much like our Humbrol. Humbrol over here is to a penny. It's in every single model shop. I don't use it, but it is available. Yeah, it's the same thing. So it's not available over here. What I have used was fantastic. To be honest, I did Mukau, the F-16 Aggressor, Arctic Aggressor, and obviously Model Master do the paints for it in the right colours. Nobody else does, so I got the acrylics sent over from the US to do those, and I used it on it, and they worked absolutely flawlessly. Can't fault them at all. But again, sorry John, we just don't get them here in the UK and we don't have a distributor for them. But they do a very good colour range. I don't know how accurate they are, but they certainly seem to cover all the bases. Okay, Ozzy says, one question, not related to modelling. God, I have to pre-read these sometimes, just in case. I would like to know what brand name of watch you have for hand. I really like it. The titanium, as you mentioned it once. Thank you in advance for your answer. To be honest, I've had this watch now, I looked it up, I've had it over 10 years. And I will be really honest with you, this never leaves my wrist. I've done everything from this, from a parachute jump to diving. And it has never come off my wrist. I go in the swim with it, I do absolutely all my sports with it, shooting, everything, no problem at all. It's been around the world more times than Phileas Fogg. But it is a Citizen Eco Drive Skyhawk. This is the Blue Angel edition. Let's see on the back, you've got the blue angel, and it's the titanium one, which makes it extremely heavy, but when you wear it, I just don't feel it. There is a story actually, because when we were on our cruise and we was in Hawaii last year, obviously on the boat, you know what it's like on these cruise things, oh, VAT free, you can have one. They had the new version, they do another version of this now, which looks quite similar, it's a little different in the face and things like that, but they didn't have the titanium one there, they just had the normal stainless steel, and it felt horrible. It just wasn't nice at all, so I've stuck with this one. But say I've had it 10 years now. It's one of these eco drives, so it doesn't need a battery or anything else. It's got multiple time zones, does all the bits and pieces. But yeah, it's showing its age. It's quite tarnished, but I just never take this thing off. It's been the most reliable watch I've ever had, and I would highly recommend it. For guys in the UK who love the Red Arrows, they do a Red Arrows edition of this as well. They're around about 400 quid, I think they are, 399. But you know, from a point of view, I used to be one of these guys who had a watch every couple of weeks because I'd break it, because I'd just buy some cheap thing for a tenner, and then I had this thing, and it has never left my wrist now in 10 years. I've had it actually over 10 years now, and it's been absolutely flawless. As I say, the abuse this thing gets, as I say, it's been diving to the bottoms of the seas, and I've done parachute jumps with it. It's been everywhere, no problem at all. Very, very nice. Okay, John Novak. Hey Phil, why don't you make a World War II prop plane in flight with prop blur? We'd love to see the build. Well, I've done plenty of World War II props. The in-flight prop blur we spoke about on the live shows, I am not a fan. I've never found one yet that I look at it and think, wow, it looks like it's flying. It's usually, wow, it's got a piece of metal on the front. The ones I do like, which I don't think you can get anymore, and correct me if I'm wrong, feel free to everyone jump in, they used to do like a company did acrylic discs, and they were etched in a way that looked like it had the prop blur into it. So they'd have like a fuzzy yellow around the very outside, and then on the inside you would have sort of, you know, distortions into it so it looked like a prop in speed. And to be honest, back in the day I commissioned, I bought a set in 1/72 scale for a Lancaster, fitted them to a Lancaster that was on a pole brass rod, and it looked like in flight. I don't think it works still, but it was the closest thing to looking like it was in flight, if you like, and did the job. It's one of those things, I think, especially these days, you're so used to like CGI and motors and various things like that. To get something to look like it's in flight with a prop blur that's working is very, very hard to do. That said, and I'm not saying this to a sales company or the rest of it, there's various manufacturers out there now who make tiny little motors that you could put in your model and have a genuine prop blur. Let's face it, it doesn't have to be flying around at like 6,000 RPM. You could have it so it's just enough to give the blur effect that's not going to sort of get too hot or do anything. But I've seen them in 1/72 scale aircraft now, absolutely tiny little motors, right the way up to huge 1/24 scale stuff with an engine in it, and do it like that, which have quite a realistic looking in-flight sort of prop blur, and do them like that. But the photo etch ones I think just look horrible. Say the acrylic disc ones, probably the best, but I still don't think it looks like it's an in-flight prop blur. But I think a motor, these days they do tiny little ones with a little penny battery. You can just pop in there, or say run the wire. If it's on a pole in flight, just run it down through the middle of the cable, out through the bottom, and stick it off to a 9-volt battery, or whichever way you want to power it, is far more realistic than looking than the metal ones especially. I can't remember the company used to do them. Wasn't it called the Prop Blur Company or something? Did various spinners, props, you know, one engine, like 3-blade, 4-blade, 5-blade props, things like that, that, you know, just didn't look right. Didn't like them at all. Okay, so Bjorn says, hi Phil, love the Q&A Tuesdays, thank you very much. I'm planning on building 1 or 2 RAF night fighters in the black scheme. How would you go about painting and weathering a black night fighter? Do you have any advice on what colours techniques to use to get a scale effect for black? Maybe using a darker grey for pre-shading. Which black would you use? I mainly use Vallejo, but I can also get hold of Tamiya locally. Do you have any paint recommendations? Okay, we spoke about this one. Remember, I'm a great believer in don't use black. Okay, you want to use shades of. So with night fighters and things like that, the classic example is you want to use an extremely dark grey, or go in with an off colour like a rubber black. Now it might sound silly, this one, but the rubber black actually isn't that far off because it has that sort of hue to it. Black as well, especially on bombers. I'm thinking mainly of bottom sides of Lancasters, stuff like that. I've seen a lot of those. But they get quite faded almost, and they pick up weathering quite easily, purely because it's a flat black colour. The texture of it is just going to pick up some rubbish. Okay, there's a couple of things you can actually do. Go in there with a lighter, so you could use white. I know we were talking the other way, okay, but you could go in with a white primer. That's going to make it quite hard for the black to cover it. All right, so you want to thin your black paint 50-50 if you're using Tamiya, or thin it sort of, about 30% for Model Air, something else like that, and then literally build up the layers from it, okay, because it's going to take 2 or 3 to actually get over the top of this white, and in that way you can do it. Then I would come back with perhaps like a dark grey, maybe like a gunship grey, something else like that, to post shade. And when I say post shade, I'm on about centres of panels, things like that, to sort of lighten them up and doing it that way. There is various blacks, I've got to remember, because the RLM, which is 22 black, I find is a little bit dark, but there used to be, what's it called, dark grey, if that's the one. I'm going to have a Vallejo binding spree at some point, because all of my lot's really horrible. But dark grey blue, 054, that's a very dark grey. You've got, obviously, yeah, that's the one, 053 dark sea grey again, but you use them with the black. Okay, so don't just put them on top of it. Mix black in with those colours, so you end up with different shades of it. Because the thing is, with black, you want to be in that situation where, again, you want it to not just be black. If it's going to be black, it's going to look horrible and look like a model. Okay, which I know it is, but you know what I mean. But the thing is, if you break it up, the eye will look at different areas. Okay, and because it's looking around, you get a scale effect. As soon as you've got the scale effect, you trick the brain, and suddenly it stops being a brick, a die-cast mahogany model, and suddenly becomes something a lot more lifelike and things like that. And again, using lighter greys sparingly just over it. The other trick as well is to use a medium grey and dry brush right the way over the entire thing. That way, if you're doing something in World War II, it might have ribbing, spars, things like that, details underneath. Anything that picks up edges would be rubbed off anyway and get a more polished look, and it'll give you that type of effect to it. But working with black, we've done before various things with it, and to be honest, don't forget, coming up in probably a month, I'm going to be doing the Halifax. Now the Halifax, I've got the upgrade set, the correction set for it, and all the rest of it coming, so it's going to be quite an interesting build. But we're going to be covering black, obviously the underside, and then the standard RAF bomber colours on the top, leading edges, things like that we're going to be looking into. But yeah, we've got the Halifax B down there, so we're going to be doing that one and covering it. So if you can hold on a month, you can go along with me. Okay, Gary says, "Hi Phil, this is my first post. Welcome. And find you on the forum to be very enjoyable. Reading and watching your videos. In your builds, you don't seem to scrape off the paint before you glue." Video's done. So quiet rendering. The old computer upstairs, because it struggles, I'm not joking, the fan goes up to like warp factor 1,000,000, and it sounds like you're in a wind tunnel because all the fans in the computer are going absolutely maniac. That thing down there, it doesn't even get anything. The fans don't even spool up, and it's just done a render in 1 hour for a 45-minute video. The old one upstairs took probably 3 hours to do that. 3.5 hours, I'd say, to do the same thing. Brilliant. Anyway, I digress. First post on here, find it very enjoyable, reading the forums, you don't seem to scrape off the paint before you glue them in place together. So I'm wondering why you don't do that. I've always read and done this. Finding out the hard way that I should have removed the paint before gluing. Is it the paint? I'm wondering minds would like to know. Thank you, sir. Hey, don't call me sir, unless I'm in trouble. P.S. Great site. Thank you, Gary. Right, weld action glues eat through paint. I tend to use weld action glue, so if I'm using Tamiya extra thin, anything else like that, it will physically eat through any paint surface you've got on there. So it will just melt the entire thing together. If you're using glues such as perhaps the resin-based one we've got down here, or you're using a super glue, then yeah, you want to clean the part because you need it to be clean so when it goes onto it, it's got something to bite onto. Otherwise the paint is just going to peel away. So if you were doing something like a weapons fit, for instance, you might want to just scrape clean the areas where it's going to touch. But, and this is where it doesn't look like I'm doing it, even if I'm perhaps tack gluing with perhaps this stuff or super glue, perhaps a weapon or a door or something else in there, you'll see me put that in and I won't scrape clean it at all. That's because afterwards I will touch it and let the capillary action zip round with a hot action one, which will melt everything together, okay? And that's a big thing. So that way it gives me the strength and the stability not to worry about having to go around and clean everything, because even though perhaps the part where it's got glue, if that was to snap, it's going to take it. Now it's welded all the way around that with a hot action glue. So even like with doors, things like that, to be honest, if you look at the MiG classic example, we use this resin glue for putting on the missiles and the pylons. And then you'll see me go around afterwards and we just touch the gap between the pylon and the actual, the wing, the capillary action, and then you see it zip round and do its bit. And we do the same for the weapon, the actual missile onto the rail the same way. We use a drop of this just to hold it in place, and then we come in afterwards with a weld action glue, and now that is on there rock solid and isn't going to go anywhere. You know, and that's the thing to it. So it's one of those smoke and mirrors with me. It maybe look like I'm doing one thing, but then we're backing it up the other way to go in and do it. And I also have to say, I used this for the first time in anger on a clear part just to see if it would fog it. It didn't, because I used it to glue the actual rear view mirror on the top here, and to be honest I've glued the canopy down solid now, but before you look up it doesn't even fog, there's nothing, it dries crystal clear. So I think you're pretty safe to put this onto clear parts right butted up close. Okay, even if it rolls slightly over, it doesn't fog. So whereas weld action glues, super glues, you're going to fog or melt, this stuff you won't. So it's quite a handy one to have. Okay, so Jason, hi Phil, I'm a new member, got all the newbies on today, new member, and finding your site very beneficial for the inexperienced modeler as myself. I recently viewed your video build on the C160 in which you use PVA glue for the windows. I'm curious if this technique would work using future glue, which is a simple decanted into a jar and then left out for a week or two to thicken. I've never heard of this. I'm also wondering if this technique would work for square and rectangle windows with rounded corners. This question comes as a past build of the Tester's Learjet 35, in which the entire window strip fell in, oh no, to the finished model, causing frustration and ultimately leading to throwing the entire project in the bin. You're not the only one who's done that. I've done that in the past. You know, you've held onto it and then the clear part pops in. I've never done a strip of windows, but yeah, nightmare. To be honest, this technique of leaving it out to thicken up, I've never tried it. I didn't think it would because it's quite thin stuff. I thought it would just go crispy. It would evaporate and go crispy. I don't know why I was thinking it wouldn't be thick enough to physically do that. So I don't know if you've read it somewhere and someone's done it, or you're just thinking of it. If you're thinking of it, I think if you ever left a pot of Testers out, when I've done it in the past, it's just gone crispy. So I probably wouldn't attempt it. Also, the thing is, with Future, when it gets thick and stuff like that, it tends to get cloudy. The other thing with using Future as well, it's not ultraviolet stable, so unfortunately if you do get light onto it, it will yellow over time. I think we've showed the bottles of it. I've got the bottles somewhere and they're going yellow and they've never been opened. It's just that I've had them now 15 years and they're in the dark, they're still going yellow. I don't think I would advise that, purely because of it's going to give you a not a crystal clear window. That said, Microsol, Micro Crystal Clear, which is Micro Industries, which is what we did on the C17. What else did we do it on recently? We guys help. I did another model because we did it on something else, but I can't remember for the life of me what it was. What was it? Oh, crikey, I can't remember now. Did we do it on the helicopter? Don't know. I'm sure we've done it on something else, but can't think what it was. This stuff will do very large areas. In fact, amazingly large areas. I can't remember. Did we do it on the helicopter? Maybe. Put plenty of it on. And also, if you can rotate it, so if you were doing it on, pretend this was the transol, you'll see me do it, and I'll do it on the windows and run it round, no problem at all. Then lean it like this. Because if you do it here, it sags to the bottom, and you end up with thick glass at the bottom, thin at the top, and you end up sometimes with a bulge as well. So I always find having it on its side, so then I would literally come along and leave it overnight like that, so it will slightly sag, and then as it shrinks and dries in, it will pull up. And to be honest, we spoke about this on a live show not so many moons ago, and I actually got the transol down for a dust and to check it. They're still crystal clear from the day we did it, and we did that now, 5-6 years ago, and they're absolutely spotless on there now still, which has amazed me, because I must admit I thought they might go foggy, but then it's quite easy, because all you do is push them out, or grab them and pull them out and redo it every now and again, and job's a good one. But no, it's up, to be honest, on top of my cupboard up there, and it's still absolutely fine. So, as I say, something I'm thinking about maybe doing on the airliners. I've bought a mask set for them, the Montex, is it Montex one? Mask set for both of them, for the 747-800 and the 787-800. But I still might, oh God, I can't be bothered with all that masking and fiddling around. I can just go and then come back the next day and you've got perfect windows. I don't know yet, we'll see. But they're a lot smaller. You're talking about bigger ones. As I say, I think it even says on here somewhere, let me just, I can't remember rightly. Yeah, it says here, ideal for windows 1/4 inch or smaller. I reckon you could go bigger than that. Yeah, not sure. You should be fine even on square ones. You might end up with not totally clear, just distortions in the corners because it's going to be thicker, but I think you should be alright. But the big thing is trial and error. Give it a whirl, see how you get on with it. If it works, brilliant. But this stuff's absolutely great for it. It's the best one I found for doing it. Don't use normal PVA glues, they don't tend to work as well. That thing is called Crystal Clear. It really is. That's the beauty with it. PVA glue has that sort of plasticky look to it. Okay, so, how are we doing? Steve says, hi Phil, always appreciate your assistance. I recently received a Meng Terminator for my birthday last week. I don't have any armoured paints for it at this time. My question is, should I buy 4 or 5 Vallejo paints from the call out, or should I get one of the Russian modern aircraft AK sets? Are they doing them? Or MiG? And do it that way. Which would you suggest? Thanks. I can't wait to see yours finished. Be finished next week. We spoke about this a little bit earlier. If you're going to use the paints, then go off and get a set. If you're not going to use them, then it's easier to buy them, because usually if you could buy them in a set, like with all of them, I think they're 3 colours, so you just need the 3 colours. If you buy the set, I think you're like 7 or 8. Although usually you get 1 or 2 free, you might not ever use them. So it depends how much you're going to use them, or if you're not going to, be too much. Linden Hill do ACAM paints, or whoever is supplying ACAM paints these days. They do the Terminator colour set, so you can buy it and it comes in 3 colours in. It's a set, I think, is it 6 or 8 colours, but it's got all the colours the Terminator's done in, so you get the woodland, the urban and the desert colours in the set, and you get a red for some reason. But anyway, I did look at it and I did think about it with that particular build. But again, I'm never going to do it again, so I couldn't see the point of buying them. I'm likely to use a light brown. I probably will use a whole red, and a sand, well, I had that anyway. So I only had to go out and technically buy one other colour, because I already had the other 2 here, and that's the thing to it. So again, it's that thing. If you're going to use it, by all means go and buy it. If you haven't used AKs or MiG's paint before, I would just buy a bottle and see how you get on with it. I'm not saying it's crap and hard to use and all the rest of it, because it's not. I'm sure people are fine with it. Just, I can't use it. It drives me mad. It's too thin. Okay, it's got no actual consistency to it. You have to give it like 10 layers to get what with this you get with 2. And to me, that's just too much time. Anyway, Alan says, hi Phil, when you did the kit review of your Kenworth, you were impressed by the chrome spruce, which I was. From experience with the new metal paints, which chrome paint do you think would be best to repair any damage? No, I tell you, even with the best AK and all the rest of it, you are not going to get chrome like you get on those chrome parts. What I would recommend, and what I'll end up doing, is probably using bare metal foil chrome as a touch-up, because it's sticky and you can literally put it down and rub the hell out of it and rub it in, and you won't notice the seam, because it's only going to be the bite from the sprue marks, okay, and maybe a centre seam, okay, but you can actually, using their stuff, bare metal foil is like a true chrome, and you could recover it. So, to be honest, years ago I had in a repair job of a model, and it was the same thing, because the fuel, it needed a new fuel tank on a lorry, and that's what I did. I bare metal foiled it and make it look like chrome, and it came up an absolute treat. And I actually surprised myself how chromy it came up. So if you're doing chrome, I think bare metal foil gives you a true chrome deep luster finish. When you're trying to do it yourself, it just doesn't work, because chroming by its nature is an electro process. You know, it's zipping it all onto it, and it's being drawn to it, and all the rest of it is dipped. It gives you a flawless finish. When you're trying to airbrush it on, it's just hard work to do chrome. If you're doing like a polished metal effect, that's different. You could probably do that, but if you're going for a chrome finish, that's something completely different, and something I don't really, well, I'm not very good at, full stop. So I would go down the cheap route and use bare metal foil. Okay, so Peter, hi Phil. Following your USS Iwo Jima build avidly, and I'm in the process with mine. I'm at that stage of giving the superstructure an all over dark ink wash, but seem to have overdone it a bit. As it's a bit too dark. As it's now thoroughly dry, it seems to be almost impossible to lighten up. Any advice, please? Okay, when you're saying the superstructure, I presume you mean the actual island itself and around that area to go around there. Again, the trouble with using inks is it's a one-way trip. If you use the wash, you can just wash it off and start again, and that is the major drawback to using ink. Okay. There's a couple of things you could do. First thing you could do is actually respray over it, but you don't have to go everywhere. You could just do the areas that are a little bit too much with a thinned paint and go right the way over it and lighten it up that way. The other thing is to dry brush it. So I think I dry brush mine anyway. You could run around and dry brush it. That will overcoat some of the darker stains you've got on there, the various bits and pieces, and you should be fine like that. Or repaint the entire thing, start again. Okay. I would probably start off with try the dry brushing, see if that lightens it up at all, because it may be just enough just to knock it back a bit, just to lighten it up. Then if that didn't work, I would freehand just thin paint and just respray it, mottle over the top, just the dark areas. That way you get that nice ship effect with it, which is what you're going to try and recreate anyway, or like I did with mine, to mottle it to make it look like it's, you know, touched in or just weathered differently in some areas that it has to other bits. Okay, that doesn't work, then respray it. You know, the great thing is if it's the island, it'll just pop off and do it like that. If it's internally, I wouldn't worry about it. You won't see it. That was a problem I had with mine. All that work we did in there, you don't see any of it whatsoever. You know, I know it looks great with the lights on and the various bits and pieces. And funnily enough, I had somebody around here the other day who's a massive ship fan, and I put the lights on and he was like, oh wow, that's brilliant. You can see right in there. And I'm thinking, all that work we did, you still can't see jack all in there anyway. So unfortunately, it's one of those things. We know it's there because you've seen the video build. He looked at it having never seen it. He hasn't got a clue with all the details, painting and weathering that went on into the inside of it because you can't see it. Okay, Nev says, hi Phil. In my line of work as an ADR HGV driver with lots of, what is an ADR? Oh, okay, that must mean a hazardous materials driver, because that's what he does, with chemicals, with all the different chemical solvents that we use in the hobby these days. Do you think it would be a good idea to advise members, especially our younger ones, of the safety of the safe storage and safe use of materials? I'm thinking of things like using IPA to thin styrene res as you advised. So a bottle of that is on your bench, and then stretching some sprue for an aerial over a lit tea light. Well, I don't do that. So you know what can develop from that. With the Flory effect, we know that people will take advice. So it could be a good thing to have a health and safety tutorial. If you think you'd up to invert, that is a very good point about making safety tips. At the end of the day, I do this as a living, and I know a lot of people have said to me recently, I had a little bit of flack about my use of acrylics because people said you're very negative to enamels and various things like it. It's not that I'm negative against it, it's that I think if you're a guy who's doing it and you do it for a couple of hours at a weekend, or a few 10 hours a week or something else like that, then the chances of you getting something nasty are pretty limited, okay? But I work with this stuff every day of my life for many hours a day, and I have done now for coming up for 20 years, okay? So the big thing is that I tend to try and do it as safely and as healthily as possible in the environment I can. Now, yes, I could be wearing a bio suit here with a mask and talking to you through a mic'd mask and all the rest of it as I'm doing everything to make sure I'm fine. The reality is that's never going to work. But I think all of us should be responsible for your own health. Resin, I think, is still, people don't realise how nasty that stuff can be. It is particularly nasty. So if you're one of these guys who works a lot with resin, you're sanding resin and all the rest of it, you should have a mask. You should be doing it outside, because those fibre particles are going to go airborne, they're going to get in your lungs, and that is really nasty stuff. You wouldn't dream of sanding asbestos. Trust me, this stuff's nasty stuff. It's very not nice. Other chemicals we use, and we spoke about it a little bit when we were talking about Vallejo versus extreme metal. And if you wanted to go in that line, then you could put the next one above it, Alclad. Alclad stinks my entire home out, okay? You can smell it in any room of the house if I sprayed Alclad. It can't be good for you, surely. If it smells that strong, it's got to be pretty nasty stuff. That's my point to it. The AK stuff is probably half of what Alclad is. Vallejo? Positively, you get a brownie point from the family because they're not stinking out there. So, that smells nice. What's that? It's metal paint. But if you look at anything on our stuff, it's always going to have flammable warnings and all the rest of it. So yes, you are quite right. You should be a little bit. And as I say, I'm pretty relaxed at health and safety, shall we say here. But if you'll notice, I will never have a naked flame ever on my bench. When I had my heat gun, I was paranoid about melting it on something, so I was like keeping it up and out of the way and everything else, and things like that. So, and anything slightly dangerous, I will do outside. I'm quite lucky we've got the covered over area at the back here now and all the rest of it, so I can open up the door, go out there, and we can do it just like that, so it's not so much of a problem. But it is everyone's responsibility to think about it, and especially the younger modelers, to make sure that they're being supervised and learn the lessons of why we don't do certain things, why you do have good ventilation, which is still a must. I know a lot of people say about me when I'm spraying about, you should be wearing a mask and that. I've got 3 spray booths there, which are all exhausting these days. So normally I'll just use the big one, but if it's a particularly big job, all 3 will be running, and as soon as the camera goes off, I will turn that on and I will leave the room. I'll stay out there for 10 minutes, usually have a coffee or something. I'll come back, the room's completely vented, and then I'll carry on spraying with it running, okay? And then you might have noticed recently, we've got the new microphones now, which are so much better for it. Actually, I'm not sure which one, maybe the latter parts of this one were with the new mics, but we can use the new mics with the exhaust running and you can still hear me. So it's not so much of a problem with that. The other one, it was like really in the background, really noisy, and I used to have to play with it in post-production to try and lose that noise. Nowadays with the new mics, these new Rode ones are fantastic. So it gives us a lot better audio range to play with and things like that. But yeah, just be careful with it. It's not just flames and things going up in smoke and burning your house down. It's the chemicals you're using, you're inhaling, you're breathing in and everything else like that. So please make sure. I'll tell you, as a classic example, super glue. How many times, and we've all been there, you get the old watery eyes because of the fumes coming off. That's how bad this stuff is. And as I say, if you're doing it all the time, it's not going to be good for you. So that's why I try and keep down the old health and safety route and all things like that. It's purely because I just do it a lot, and I don't fancy getting lung cancer or, God forbid, or anything else, horrible touching wood here through my own fault. I know it's a horrible thing, and bless everybody who is going through it and got family going through it. Christ, we've just been through it. But from my point of view, is that if you can avoid these things and not put yourself in the firing line for it, then it's pretty much a no-brainer on that one. You want to do that one. So there we go. All right, let's just answer a couple more. Just to the bottom of the page, and then we'll have to call it quits today, guys. So Chris says, was that one there? Yeah. Thank you, Nev, on that one. And if you can think of something particularly nasty we should be avoiding, post it up in the forum. Everyone would like to hear that. Okay, Chris says, hi Phil, am I correct in saying that you made the 172nd Millennium Falcon, Revel Millennium Falcon, in one of your shows? I can't find it on the forum. Can you please advise me where it's situated? Yeah, it was only the snack type one. I did it as a kids thing at Christmas. It's a freebie. It was a free to wear. If you go on the YouTube page, it's just in there. I think it's on the Facebook page as well. It was also part of a news show. What it was, I clamped it to the end of a news show just before Christmas when we were doing them all. It would have been early December, something else like that. Again, use the search. It does work for the actual main site as well as the actual YouTube. If you go to YouTube, our YouTube page, I think a lot of people don't realise, but although if you're a non-member and watching this, you can still see quite a lot there free to air, okay? Some of it's got adverts all over it and all the rest of it, and I apologise, but the members ones won't, okay? But the thing is, if you go in there, you can see, you know, some of the stuff we get up to, some of the older stuff, some of the things like we do quick kids. The kids stuff I don't like to charge for, obviously. So the kids builds I usually put up as a free to watch and everything else like that. So we have the free to watch area actually on YouTube. The weathering area is usually free on YouTube and various things like that. So there's plenty of information out there. And that was one of those builds. As I say, it's only the snap type. Don't think it's the Revels Reeboks of the fine molds one, because it's not. That one is coming out. In fact, I've been offered one of them. There's an alternative motive. I've got to give it back once I've built it, but I have been offered one of those when it comes out. Anyway, Graham says, have you used your metal seam scrapers on filled gaps and seams? I'd be interested to know the difference fillers such as super glue, putties and melted styrene react to the scrapers. Do they peel it out of the gaps or resist the scraper? To be honest, funny enough, this video here, we talk about that. You're going to have that up tomorrow. The Alex scrapers, these are the one we're talking about. Everyone's talking about. I should have shares in this stuff. To be honest, it's not very good on putties or super glues. Both directions. Obviously on a putty it's really soft and it will just dig it out easily, a lot easier than it does the plastic. Super glue, it's hard as nails to get through, and to be honest it carves through it and tears through it instead of, you know, smoothing through it. So I wouldn't recommend it on putty, and I certainly wouldn't recommend it on super glue. That said, because when we use our, wherever it is now, I had it out earlier, our home brew, you know, mix, we speak about that obviously a lot during this as well. It's so easy, and it's what we actually say. The reason I like this stuff is because when you re-rivet, sand, Alex scrape, it's no different from doing the plastic in the first place. So it gives you exactly the same texture, feel and everything else. So like when you're rescribing, you don't suddenly go too deep into putty. And then obviously if it was super glue, it's not suddenly you go along, you hit a rock, okay? And it is the same when doing re-riveting. You don't make a massive great hole because you've hit putty or rock hard and you can't get through it if it's actually using super glue. So this stuff is absolutely fantastic, but to be honest, I tend to use it as deburring more than anything. We used it beautifully on these tubes, and if you were doing it, if you follow this particular build, you'll see that I use a different technique where I use extra thin and we flood the tubes. Because you've got this detailed rings going all the way around it, if you can't get in there with a scraper because there's not enough room, and technically you can't get in there with a sander because you're going to destroy the detail. So actually what we do, we melt our way through. So we actually put too much thin glue right over it, and then we go over it until we physically melt the burr line off. So that way, as it looks at it here, and I'm looking at it, and they look absolutely perfect. There's not a mark on there, and it's completely seamless because all we've done is melt our way through instead of, you know, sanding our way through. We've melted it, okay, which is great. So if you're doing undercarriage legs and you get like the burring line, the sandwich line, the little bit of plastic that's raised, as I say, hold it out, glue, extra thin, plenty of it on there, and just keep brushing at it and you'll melt your way through. And then because you put a little bit more on afterwards just to smooth it out, perfect finish every time. Okay, Neil says, hi Phil, any hints on how to make decals look good over, sorry, yeah, Neil. Hi Phil, any hints on how to make decals look good over raised details such as vortex generators, inspection hatches and any other obstacles? I've tried putting decals down and generally cutting around the raised part, but never seem to get it look right. I think we've covered it on one of the builds. We had a lot of vortex generators. What I tend to do is I'll put the decal right the way over the top and hit it with softeners. Okay, so you go in there with your micro set and sol, or my chosen 2, or a little bit of X20A if you're being careful, and get it to conform down. But you're going to trap air underneath, so you need to release that air. So it involves a lot of time stabbing it with a pin, more over the top and go through. More often than not, a quick way of doing it is once you've initially got it to go over, perhaps you've got a band now of it raised on the top, okay? Then I will take a very fine sanding stick. So if you take something like one of our green skinnies or a green sander, okay, and literally, because it's very, very fine, you'll be able to sand the top of that decal off on the vortex generator or the hatch or whatever it is. So you sand over it, okay? Then if you put micro sol, the red one, over the top, which is the setting one, what will happen is it will suddenly deflate around it because the air can get out and it will slide down over the area. So if you've got your vortex generator, something like this, and your decal at the moment is laying over it, once you sand over the top, it will then go down over it like this. Then you can come back in with the colour it is and touch it in. So if it's like, you know, I don't know, say you got a red roundel over the top of it, just go back in with red paint, just touch the tops of the vortex generators. You don't have to do the sides of it because it is so thin, and you might notice it will do that on the sides of it anyway, but the top will need it, otherwise you'll have dots all along the top. And the same goes with heavy riveting, big panel access panel, something else like that. If you sand over it, it'll just make it, and then put the setting solution over the top, it will literally just deflate over it and give you a nice smooth finish right the way over it, just like that. So that's the way I would do it anyway. Okay, last one, Steve Lamb. Hi Phil, 2 questions regarding clear. Firstly, can you add it to a flat coat to give you a semi-gloss finish? Yes, you could do that. That's very old school, but that's what they used to do in the old day. Literally, you start off with clear as being your normal gloss, okay, and you put it down. One little tip though, with clear, what you can actually do is up the air pressure, I mean really up it, a little bit further away and spray it down, it will go on as a matte. Turn the air pressure down a bit, a little bit closer, you'll get a satin, nice and wet, you'll get a gloss. So with clear, you can get almost any finish. You're not going to get a dead flat finish because you're going to need something with some bite in it. But when I used to do the tutorials and we did training here and the open days about it, I used to show about using a gloss to do flat work, and that's how I would do it. Okay, second one, there is talk on Facebook model groups regarding using clear to use on decal saying, what is it with Facebook? I think Facebook is blaming old school stuff coming back. I don't know where it's all coming from. It seems to be like this black primer business. It's like, God, people used to do that years ago. It's just come back and now it's fashionable. Yeah, this is another example of something that was mainstream years ago and everyone moved away from it for whatever reasons. And now somebody's mentioned it on Facebook and it's like, oh, that's how you do it. It used to be the thing. You used to use clear as your setting solution for your decal. So what you'd actually do is, instead of brushing down, you know, perhaps your setting solution onto your model and then coming along, you know, putting your decal on, you basically just replace that with clear. So you put clear down first, put your decal on top, okay, and then you could clear over the top of it. Basically all you're doing, when you're doing any type of decaling like this, you're just trying to remove all the air. So clear by its nature, it's a little bit thick. It's, well, not thick, but it's thicker, shall we say, than water or a setting solution. You get a cushion effect, and as it dries out, it pushes down, all the air gets pushed out. That's all you're doing with it, okay? And it can be used, as I said. It was pretty much how people used to do it back in the day. I think before setting solutions came along, that's how it was done. Okay, but now it's like modern setting solutions and stuff like that, you don't really need to do it. But now it seems to be, someone's mentioned it on Facebook and it's doing the rounds now, and we're back to being, oh, it's a new way of doing it. But actually it's what people used to do in the 70s. Put gloss down, decal on top of the gloss, and then seal it down. But all you're doing literally with this type of effect is getting the air out. So what happens is when this goes down, it conforms to all the panel lines, the details, because there's no air pocket to stop it from going down. And to be honest, it's just what a modern setter does. These particular ones went down really well, these trumpeter ones, because there's quite a few access panels around where the decals go down. And to be honest, with this one, I just used a little bit of micro sole just over the top, no actual softener, just the sole over the top, and they etched in there and went down there really well. But you would expect it because it's over a gloss finish and a nice sort of finish, so you wouldn't have a problem with that one. So there we go. I think that will do us for today. Yeah, we've got a couple. I'll tell you what, I'll do these last 3 and then we'll call it quits. We've got 3 more and that'll bring us up to date, and I can quickly then type a thing in there and get this in. Okay, so Patrick says, hi Phil, Vac-form canopies. Okay, are they the work of the devil? Probably. Are they a good thing? Any advice on a way to deal with these things in terms of cutting out maybe a tutorial of this dark art? That's my stomach. Okay, regards from Sunny Hull. Is it sunny? Really? It's been lovely here today. Right, okay, Vac-form canopies. Yes, I've used them a lot. I've got some actually in there for doing them. Vac-form canopies used to be the way to go because injection moulding was so bad and cloudy and horrible that vac-form ones, you could get a replacement canopy for almost everything back in the day. Nowadays, because canopies are good, classic example, it's a beautiful canopy on that one. But a lot of the kit reviews we've done recently, I've never seen a bad canopy. So you don't really need them. But we've all been in that thing where we've cracked a canopy, let's face it. I've probably done more than most of various things. So from that point of view, a vac-form canopy can be a great replacement. The thing with it is just remember it's a one-way trick. It's like working with resin. When you cut it out, what I tend to do is I'll grab a Sharpie. Sharpies are brilliant. They are handy just to have, okay? This is a big one actually. I thought it was a thin one, but you can get thin ones as well, okay? So what you want to do, place it down and go round the bottom, because technically that is where you want to make your cut. Usually it's where it's flat down. So you're just going to go around the edge and like this, okay? And then you're going to cut up to the black line, but don't cut through the black line, okay? That is your get out of jail free card, okay? Because this gives you then the movement. So then what you're going to do is marry it up to your model and see how it looks, and it probably won't look any good and not going to fit. So then you start to sand your way in, but you certainly don't cut anymore, okay? So using a fine sander, just sand your way in, put it down, see how it's looking, sand your way round, put it down, see how you're looking, and generally work it in very slow. Because the big thing with vac-form is it's very easy to go too far. As soon as you've gone too far, you've got a gap, and then you've got all types of trouble. Because a vac-form is so thin, you can't just hit it with filler, okay? Because it's not going to work like that, okay? You're going to need probably another one and do it again. We've used where have we used vac-forms? We've used vac-forms on a couple of resin builds I did. The old Hawkeye, that was a resin, entire top of it, the Hawkeye, for the Resin Wonder, which I think is still on the site somewhere, before we did the, is it Hobby Boss, Trumpeter, whoever's it is, Kinetics, Hawkeye afterwards. You know, but that was a vac-form one right the way over the top, and again, even that one, I cocked it up, cut too far, had to fill it, but luckily, because on the top of it, doesn't matter, we got away with it. But that is the secret with it, is to go through. Funny enough, if a certain vac-form thing ever turns up that I ordered almost a year ago, which apparently will be here in March now, that's more vac-form cutting than you could shake a stick at, which is something, be our biggest project still. For those of you who haven't twigged it yet, it's 6'4", and fantastic, and I'm still waiting for it to come up. But yeah, the big thing with vac-form is just taking your time, slowly go. A bit like what you're doing with resin. If you need to shave a bit off, just do a bit, have a look, test fit it, see how it works, and go through. Once you've got it, then you can then take it away, mask it up and all the rest of it. The great thing with vac-form, you don't have that trouble of like shattering it like you do with resin or with injection molded canopies. So you can just mask it up how you want to do, place it onto there, glue it into position, and again, don't use super glue. And don't use like a weld action glue because it will fog. So with that one, I highly recommend using something like this stuff, this resin based glue, or just go in with a PVA glue as you would do normally, okay, and do it that way. Okay, so David says, hi Phil, I'm working out of my comfort zone building the Bandai C3PO. I've decided to build him with a red arm. Currently the parts in the bath of chemical bleach, and most of the plating has come off. There's still some doesn't seem to want to let go. They've been in the jar for 3 days, and I've changed the bleach once. Do you have any suggestions for dealing with the stubborn plating? Have you tried brushing it? Old toothbrush? That's the way I always used to do it. The other thing as well, stick it in Coke. It's probably worse than bleach. Bleach does the trick. Trust me, I have a plug hole upstairs which is plastic because a certain partner of mine bleaches anything. Everyone comes here will know she's got a thing for bleach, and quite frankly, it's got no plating on it because she bleaches everything and it's all gone. The other thing as well is just try something slightly different. So try Coke. That last bit, just stick it in a can of Coke. You know, don't drink it, and just see what happens in there because you might find it's a little bit more abrasive. You'd be amazed what Coke can do, and do it like that. If that doesn't work, then obviously you've got other options like oven cleaners, things like that, just to get it off. If you're talking just in those little recesses, it could be a thing of just getting in there with some tools and just hooking them out, scraping them out, things like that, sanding it off if it just won't let go in that particular area, and then going through, prime it, spray it, and away you go. Technically there's like this stuff. I know it's the horrible stuff and it's the polyurethane, but like, you know, I know this one's the deeper red, but it's the red brown primer colour, things like that. There is obviously your reds, the lighter red primers, things like that will probably do a nice job on it. We spoke about it with Adam. I've got the said arm literally down there. I was supposed to spray it, but I forgot, and everything else. But yes, try it with something else, see if that goes. If not, get in there and hook it out. Okay, last question. Martin. Hi Phil. If you are still looking for ideas for new tools, new tutorials, could I put in a request for a piece on hand painting? What are the best types of paints should I try that you know of, etc.? I'm thinking on how to deal with small complicated parts for an F1 engine, which is all various colours, bits and bobs. If you're talking small stuff, then yeah, absolutely, we can do things on painting, that's not a problem. And to be honest, I was going to get some of the Vallejo normal white top paints, because I was talking to some of the guys and they all swear by them, they say absolutely fantastic, and I was going to buy like primary colours, things like that, because the great thing with those, are thicker, they don't dry, so when you're hand painting them, it gives you far more time. If you're talking about painting a model, I am the wrong person to ask, because I haven't hand painted anything in, just trying to think, probably about 1992 was the last time I hand painted anything. Early 90s it would have been. So certainly I haven't done anything since then. Early 90s I switched over for airbrushing, never looked back. I know there's some fantastic, actually I saw one on Facebook the other week and somebody is like, hand painted, like really? I even questioned it because it is so good. I didn't think you could hand paint that good, but there you go. Obviously the guys out there can do it. But small parts, things like that, then yeah, I'm probably, as I say, I want to buy a set. I don't know if they do a set. I don't want to buy like a 92 colour set, but just a set of like primary colours, things like that, just for the shelf. And then I can replace some of my Tamiya ones that I always hand paint, because that's what I tend to do. That mid row up there tends to be hand painting. I might replace that with Vallejo model hobby colour paints. Is it hobby colour? Model colour paints? You know, the white top ones, because they hand paint beautifully. Got a long time to dry. They don't dry out instantly like Tamiya does, or Guns, or even like the Model Air. Gives you nice time to work with and everything else. So I might look at getting some of those in, and perhaps we'll do a tutorial. I'll do a demo about using them, painting with them and things like that. So there we go. Thank you very much. I'm just going to put a quick placeholder in here. So let me do this as we do. So add reply. It just says placeholder. So there we go. That gets me in there and we're completely up to date. So what I'll do is I'll put the video in there so you know all the ones previous to that we've spoken about today. So there we go. We've gone slightly over, which means it'll be up half the evening editing. But never mind. Here we are at just coming up to 2:45. So if I get on with it straight away, we should be up there around about 7, 8 o'clock tonight. So thank you very much for all your questions and everything else. Remember, if you've got a question for me, pop it in the forum, please. Don't send it to me direct, because trust me, we get so many emails every day. I just never get a chance to get around to seeing them all and everything else like that. Okay, so please do it through the forum. It just makes things so much easier for me. Tomorrow you've got the next part of the MIG up, which I have edited. I've got to remember what it is. I think we do the different colours and we talk about the post shading as well. Yes, we definitely cover the post shading and all on there and everything else like that. There's going to be another part for the MIG as well, which will be up with you next week. week, so that one will be up like that. Kit reviews this week, I'm really hoping it's going to be here in time. If not, it's going to be airliner day, but I have got a couple of very tasty aircraft coming in this week and a couple of other bits and pieces, but I haven't had a dispatch note say they're coming yet, so I'm not sure exactly when they're going to be in, but they should be. If not, we'll be reviewing Revell's airliners this week, and I've got a couple of other bits and pieces I can do reviews as well. So there we go. Thanks a lot everybody for joining me, and I'll catch you all next week.